Now we have a presentation from what I would call an IFSF favourite. So Mark's here to talk to us about flexibility in the world of developing consumer experience. Mark, for those of you who don't know him, is the European Director from NACS. Mark, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you very much, Heather, and welcome everyone to this virtual IFSF conference. So much about flexibility, right? I guess flexibility is the one thing that we really see has saved our day really in a lot of industries. So let me talk a bit about that. So what I brought with me today is another part of our convenience briefing, which is kind of a global convenience radar screen. You know that we measure and monitor worldwide basically three things, which is global strategic industry issues. So what keeps us awake at night? International retailer best practice, who does what best, and current and future industry impacts, so what is coming our way. And something that came our way definitely is COVID-19 here in 2020. Big agenda. What I picked for today is two things. I want to talk about flexibility, the key requirement for ever faster changing consumer expectations, especially in times of global pandemics that happened in 2020. And I also want to share on the bottom left here some best practice that we collected from 2020. So what are retailers doing, not just focused on flexibility and COVID, but also around that. You will get the slides, by the way, so no need to screenshot every slide or something like that. Don't worry, you'll get a handout afterwards. Talking about flexibility here and 2020. I mean, 2020 was the year when the world came to a standstill, right? This is a map of government response on the pandemic. I think it was by April when basically the whole world was shut. Then over summer, some restrictions were eased and the world was opening up again a little bit. And then I guess by now we are back in lockdown 2. I think I just read the other day that the Collins Dictionary, they chose the word of the year 2020, and it actually is lockdown. So this is what happened in 2020, right? This is the key thing of 2020. The world came to a standstill, and with that, some industries collapsed. You see here a list of just companies in the UK and some big big names here: Victoria's Secret, Debenhams. You have Beals on here, Laura Ashley, all companies that either went into administration or had to close a big part of their business or had to shut down a lot of stores. And this is just a list from the UK. I mean, this list, Europe-wide or worldwide, this has a major impact actually on how we do retail. Probability of default went up manifold. I mean, 2% probability of default before the pandemic and up to 20% or more than 20% for the top 5 industries here, which is airlines, leisure facilities, oil exploration, auto parts, and restaurants. So we talk a lot about investment money coming into our industry, but if you look at it, for some industries, investment money, well, has been pulled out and might take a time until it gets back. And these are the pictures that we saw all over the news, right? Airplanes being parked somewhere in the desert just because there was no use for them. So the world came to a standstill. Industries collapsed, and well, we reacted how we react. This is not the 7 stages of grief, but it is something quite similar. It's about personal as well as commercial well-being. What do we do? How do we react when something happens? And as you can see here, that little smiley guy on the left-hand side, status quo, everything is okay. And then someone told us early this year, there is a worldwide pandemic going on. And we reacted as we react, not just on a personal level, but also on a corporate level with numbness. Pandemic, oh my God, what does that mean? Is that the end? We just didn't know what to do. Followed by some disbelief. Well, it can't be that bad. All the way up to denial. It's just a flu. It's over there in China. You know, it's not here. It's not that bad. But at some point, we actually had some uncertainty. Could it may be up to confusion? What do all those experts say? Is it bad or is it not? All the way to depression and all the way into a real crisis. So this is how we react on a personal level, and this is how we react as organizations and as businesses. And you might remember some of those stages either in your personal life or in your organization as well. Question is, what do we do from there? So this is the past. We have the crisis, right? Crisis is there. And is this the end? Yes or no? Question probably is, how do you react on that? How do you see the end? How do you see this crisis? Do you actually, and I know it's a bit of a corporate talking here, do we have an issue or do we have a challenge? But it's absolutely true. Do you approach it negatively as an issue? You think everything is bad, everything is different, and that is bad. Then you actually might prolong the crisis. Or worst case, you might actually give up and say, I can't do business like that. Or do you accept the situation as it is, as some people call it the new normal, whatever that is, but you accept it. You accept that trading will be different. And with that, you accept that you have a challenge and you actually start to experiment, to gain some new confidence and to build something that is strong as before or even stronger. Or maybe not as strong, but at least you'll survive. So this is the question how to approach this actually. And the key thing here to see something as a challenge, to accept it, to explore is flexibility. You have to be flexible in your mind, but you also have to be flexible in your assets. And that is a tricky thing really, because quite often we neglect that flexibility. Um, you know this, right? When you this little cartoon is out there, when you ask for the restroom key in a petrol station, um, less and less you see that. But we all know the situation, and unfortunately, it still exists in some places. You can't access the toilet in a petrol station from the inside. You get a key with a big stick of something attached to it so that you don't lose it and bring it back, and you have to exit the store. So this is a floor print of a typical convenience store laid out in that way. And I hope you can see my mouse moving here. If not, I'll just guide you through it. So on the bottom right, you enter the store. There are the doors. There's the cash register zone, and you have all your interiors. But if you want to exit the toilets, you have to enter the toilets. You have to exit the store, walk around the store, and enter the toilets from the outside. And the way the designers build this is absolutely not flexible. Because what if you ever decide to want to provide access to the toilets from the inside? This is not a simple job. This means you have to tear down the wall between the toilets and the store, which probably is a load-bearing wall because no one ever thought that you might need flexibility. You can see that they put all the fountain drinks machines up here on the wall right next to the toilets. I don't know if that says anything about the quality of the fountain drinks that they are right next to the toilet wall, but let's keep that aside. If you really wanted to change that, it doesn't mean you can just open a wall, put a door in, done. This is a major undertaking. This means you have to redo the entire store. You have to rip things out. You have to rebuild walls. You have to have a structural engineer coming out, and so on and so on. This is a really good example about not being flexible. Just think about other examples on your site as well. Remember how much work it was to put underground storage tanks in. It means you have to dig everything up, put it in, and then you bury everything. What if that needs change? What if standards change? What if environmental regulations change? How much work is it to actually get access to them? What if electric charging comes and you want to put a charger somewhere on your site, but there actually is no electricity cable, no power cable whatsoever? You have to dig everything up and put new infrastructure in. And talking about cables, they are never where you need them, right? It's like in your house. If you want to plug in a lamp, the power socket is never where you need it. The same in an office, which is why we have the situation on the picture on the bottom left here, putting all these cable trays and trying to get the Ethernet cables to where you need them. Back to our footprint here, our blueprint. You see the cash register zone is right next to the door. This is probably where you have all the Ethernet cables ending, right? Because you need to connect the cash register somehow to your system. But who says that in 2 years from now, if this is a newly built store, 2 years from now, you will have the cash register at that exact location? Maybe actually new research shows that the best location for it is not next to the door, but on the opposite side of the store. Then you have to rip everything out, dig everything up, put all the new infrastructure in, except if you build the store with more flexibility in mind. And this is something that is not new, but this is something that has accelerated. In the past, it was okay to have your store renovated every number of years. Today, technological advancement is so fast that things change in an instant and every year. So you need to be aware that maybe the cash register is not even needed anymore, but instead you need cameras and other equipment in store because you will do a staffless store. Or maybe it is just that you need certain things at a different place in store. So the typical brick and mortar built store with everything paneled and glued and screwed to it, this is not how you build a store in the future because you need flexibility. And how difficult it is to change something if you build it in fix is about this picture, top left. Remember when you were allowed to smoke on airplanes? That has been a long time ago. But if you bought an airplane these days, how often do you actually board an airplane where there still is an ashtray? It is glued or screwed shut, right? You can't use it. But there still is an ashtray because they build it in, fix. It's not flexible. And they had no idea what to do with it except for gluing it shut. So flexibility, because of ever faster changing consumer expectations and because of ever faster changing technology, becomes really important. Some industries actually can't experiment, right? They can't be that flexible. If you have tied up capital, if you have high fixed cost, airlines, for example, I mean, you have airplanes. What can you do with them? I mean, a couple of creative examples were just on the news. I think it was Thai Airways with the flights to nowhere. You board a plane in Bangkok. I think in Bangkok it was. You fly off, you fly, do a sightseeing tour of 33 Buddhist temples, and you fly back to Bangkok again. Or you don't even lift off, you just stay on the airplane at the airport, you get a 5-course meal, and you treat it like a restaurant. It's creative, but it might not generate the income they need for it. Also, if you have a lot of specialized equipment, if you have low agility because of what you're doing, tobacco manufacturing plants here can't really be used for much else. Yes, that is difficult, but our industry actually can experiment and they can do and react they can do things and react quickly. A couple of examples. What has been done, this is on the right-hand side, the big box here, 7-Eleven in the US, started to use Meritech automated hand wash. Um, these systems were out there, they are not new, but 7-Eleven used them in more and more of their stores, making sure that employees really wash their hands perfectly. But even more than that, not just that the hands are clean, it's also communicating this to the consumer, right? Because for the consumer, in the past, dirty was just dirty. But today, dirty means lethal. Even if it isn't, it's the perception. So you have to do some sanitation theater here. You have to really show the customer what you are doing. A couple of other examples how technology can help. MCS, the wholesaler in Germany, they do a lot of consulting actually for their customers, and they couldn't do that in person anymore. So they actually created a lot of videos online with category advice, and moving the entire consulting part of the business online. And that is possible today. ICA in Sweden used virtual queuing as one of the first larger chains to do that worldwide. Remember the first part of lockdown, you had to queue a long time in front of a supermarket. This is easy. You just go to the store, you scan a barcode with your phone and you enter a virtual queue. It tells you exactly what number in the queue you are. You do something else. You just queue in front of the store. You go shopping somewhere else, come back as soon as the app tells you, hey, you are next in line. PKN Poland reacted because they couldn't get enough PPE supply actually, so they hired a plane, flew over to China, bought what they could get, and supplied their stores. And Cost Cutter in the UK put up rural pop-up stores. It's the size of a shipping container, because they saw that. That the need for stores was moving away from commuter sites all the way into residential areas where there probably weren't any stores. So there's a lot of flexibility, a lot of examples how retailers can react, and I think our industry actually has done a really good job on this. So flexibility is key to build things to stay more flexible, in your building, in your assets, also in your mindset. But you will probably say, well, we couldn't have seen this coming, right? I mean, come on, this is a pandemic. Who would have known that we can have a pandemic, that there will be a pandemic? Well, could we? This is from the National Risk Register of Civil Emergencies from 2017. And look at the matrix. What is on the top right, meaning the highest severity of impact and the highest likelihood of occurring in the next 5 years? It's a virus. It's on top of the list. A virus, a pandemic. Yes, they didn't say that this would be a COVID virus. They thought it might be some kind of influenza virus, but it is on the top of the risk list. And I mean, if you didn't know that, fine, maybe because it's just not your job. But if you have a risk manager who looks at your business risk and they didn't identify it, then it might be time to rethink about your risk management. So there are a lot of things that we actually can think about right now. And there's more on the list, as you can see here: severe weather, some accidents happening. Yes, I mean, God forbid, I hope there will never be a nuclear catastrophe. There will never be an accident like that. There will never be a terror attack on our power grid. But these things can happen. It doesn't mean that we have to provide for it right now. So you don't have to build a bomb shelter just because there is a remote possibility of a nuclear bomb going off somewhere in the world. But you can build in flexibility into your operations, into your business, into your infrastructure to be able to react quickly on whatever catastrophe will happen next. And people are already saying, yes, we have a pandemic, and this will not be the last one. The closer we live with nature, the more it might happen that we have another virus within the next decade or next 2 or 3 decades. We don't know and we can't prepare for it. So you don't have to buy PPE right now, but at least you should have the flexibility and the process in place to know how to buy PPE in case you know it. So there is some of the things that we can do. And with that, let's look at a little bit of retailer best practice. Not just focused on COVID, but also influenced a lot by what has happened with COVID and with the pandemic. First example here from the UK, and this is Sainsbury's. And Sainsbury's reacted on the need of home delivery. It has been accelerated by COVID, and they created something they call Chop Chop. Chop Chop is in English expression, which means something doing it quickly, like the German zack zack, or the I don't know, French or Italian rapido or rapide or something like that. Francois, please correct me if I was wrong with the French word, but you get the gist of that. So Chop Chop is the name of the service, which is just a great name. You can order 20 items and you get them in 60 minutes. As simple as that. So they didn't try to provide everything to everyone everywhere. This is a service within London. And in London, you download their app, you order maximum 20 minutes, 20 items, but you will get these 20 items within 60 minutes. So that is a real response on the need of the consumer to have home delivery, as well as to not plan ahead that much, but actually say, oh, I want to cook this, I need that. Second example here is started out before Corona or before COVID and got a different direction after that. It's FGC from Argentina. They actually started to look at petrol stations as an opportunity at those petrol stations that have been abandoned. You see on the bottom right here a picture of an old abandoned petrol station. These are the types of sites that they actually acquire. And they rebuild them into a petrol station. But the focus is not on petrol. It also sells petrol, yes, but the focus is really here on building a community hub. It's all about, you see here, it's all about light, it's all about food. It's a restaurant style business that also has some petrol on sale, with a huge focus on the restrooms, with a huge focus on food quality and on cleanliness. And then COVID came and they proved to be absolutely right with their aspect, with their approach, because consumers really saw this as, this is a place where I can go, right? Everything is light and bright and open and nice and clean, and they have clean restrooms, and I feel absolutely safe there. So the way we were working before the pandemic, I guess a lot of investment into cleanliness, into food safety, has prepared us very well for this. Another thing to keep in mind is balanced life living consumers. It's about healthy food, it's about choices. Now, when the pandemic hit early this year, we all thought, well, people will be concerned about health. Everyone starts buying vitamin C, right? You couldn't get any vitamin C. It was sold out in every store. So people should be, it seems people are concerned about their health, and that means they want to eat healthy food. We could not have been more wrong. What happens actually in our stores? This is what I hear from all the petrol station chains, from all the convenience store chains. People started indulging. Yes, they were concerned about their health. And yes, they were taking vitamins. But when they go to the convenience store, they want to indulge. They want to buy chocolate. They want to buy some bakery products. And this was at the start of the pandemic. But this will come to an end, and it will come to an end soon. And people will go back to, and even more than before, to their healthy lifestyles. So keeping that in mind also with the flexibility is you have to be able to shift your category focus quickly. You have to be able to focus more on indulgence if needed, to focus more on healthy if needed. And it is the same as we do through the seasons. You sell certain things more during summer, certain things more during winter. So you're used to that. You shift all the time. It's just that we have to adapt and be flexible. We have to adapt more quickly than before. Spara came up with this one-person store ready for a socially distanced society. It is size of a shipping container again here, a very small store. There's only one person in the store allowed at any time. It's a one-way store, so you queue on one side, you enter the store, door will shut, you can do your shopping, you exit on the other side, door will open again, next one in. Is this a concept that will roll out, that will work everywhere, that you need everywhere? No, absolutely not. But it is absolutely a concept that fits to the time that we're in and that has a need in certain situations, in certain locations. And the way it is built, it means it is flexible. If you don't need it on one side, you can move it to another side. Again, something about flexibility. 2 or 3 more examples here, being aware of the time. This has nothing to do actually with the pandemic, but fits in any way. This is Dr. Oetker in Germany, reviving one of their icons. Back in the 50s, they had Frau Renate, which is Mrs. Renati, was their advertising icon. It was the typical housewife of the 1950s, a role model. It was all about cooking. And she was very, very popular. Of course, today, roles are very different. You can't revive anything like that, but they did it anyway because there is a lot of positive connections to this old advertising icon. And what they did is they brought it into this century. They brought it into this decade. So they are still using the same picture here, the same imagery, and it's all about comfort, about good food, about feeling well, about indulging yourself, but also being healthy, about caring for each other. And they took all the positive aspects. They took out all the negative aspects of the 1950s role divisions, but used the positive aspects and brought that into something that you rarely find these days, a smiling, friendly face that comforts you and that gives you something really positive. I put on here walking a fine line because there is a lot of controversy, of course, today about how roles have been back in the past, and you need to be careful that you don't revive the wrong things. You have to revive the right things. But if you have something like that, if you have an asset like that, why not reviving that, especially in times like this, to make sure you actually have something for your consumers to help them during difficult times. So this, I'm pretty sure, will have worked very well during the year. 2 more examples before my time is up. One is just brilliant. This is about technology and how to turn a cost center into profit center. Total in Germany started this with a concept of the retail marketeers and hotspot suite. Wi-Fi, providing Wi-Fi to customers, that's a cost center, right? You just have to pay for it. And you have to pay for the equipment and you have variable cost. But they actually turned this into a profit center because you can just provide the Wi-Fi for free, that's it. But you can also think about selling the Wi-Fi to certain types of customers, to customers outside of your store, and just inside you get it free. So there are options to resell it. There are options to do promotions. If customers use your Wi-Fi, you can actually put promotions onto their phones directly in store as soon as they enter the store, as soon as they connect to the Wi-Fi. You can collect data, of course, about your customers, and make sure that you make the most out of that data. So Hotspot Suite is offering that, and I think it's a brilliant concept. And this example is just from Total in Germany, who used it. Final example comes from Brazil, Ipiranga, with their AM/PM brand. They tried to move the stores to the consumer because the consumer during lockdowns were not going to the store anymore. So what they did is they opened up pop-up stores very close to big apartment buildings, close to some apartment buildings. They already had stores. So within the apartment building, on the right-hand side of the big picture here, you see they put barcodes onto the elevator doors. And if you get home, or if you are at home, if you stand in front of the elevator, you just scan it. And it's the app on the left-hand side that you see here. You can order your food directly from the store that is very close by, actually, but you don't want to go there. You don't have to go there. And then you click on something that they call room service. I just love the idea of naming it room service. And you actually get it delivered to your apartment building, to your apartment from the store that is not that far away. And that within a very, very short amount of time, right? They also have fresh food here. Was that 9 new lines of burgers with grilled meat? Sounds good, looks good, makes me hungry now. So moving the store closer to the consumer, even if that is just virtually. That it did the same here. You can see that on the center picture at their petrol stations. If you fill up and you pay for it with your app directly at the pump, you can scan that barcode, enter their virtual store while you're fueling, and you can order something and they bring it out directly to your car. So moving the stores even virtually to your customer is something that you definitely can do. So flexibility is key, and flexibility will be key. My message here, I guess, is that stay flexible in your mind and also stay flexible in your infrastructure. No matter what you're building into your stores or outside the stores, think EV chargers today, make sure that you leave room whenever you touch something anyway. Leave room for improvements that will come in the future. We're also innovating and being flexible like that. So if you want more content like that, we have our Crack the Code experience on right now. It's 5 weeks of content, 50 sessions, a trade expo. You know, we had to unfortunately cancel the next show for this year. So join us online or join us with our events back again next year. So thank you very much for listening. Heather, back to you.
Mark, thank you very much. I always love your presentations. So many interesting things in there. I have to say that I did think that the guy with the key, he had a toilet brush on the end of it, or a plunger, even worse. And I was thinking, what do they do in Germany in toilets? I mean, I have been to the odd service station in Germany. Yeah. Let's not go there on German toilets and all the things.
Oil canisters, empty oil canisters.
Even scarier as a concept. So, Mark, I have a question here from Mr. Carrier. So in fact, he calls it a serious question. So
no.
An unserious question.
Sorry, Ian, I don't do serious questions.
So, I see my friends shopping more and more local, butcher, news agency, store, small grocer. Fuel and convenience are ideally situated to meet this need. Is there inflexibility that is stopping them building on this opportunity?
Let me give you an example of something that a CEO of a European oil company and petrol station provider gave me. When they were under lockdown the first time, what they did is they learned that, of course, the commuter stores were kind of empty, right? They were losing a lot of money. And their residential area petrol stations, they were booming. People were suddenly buying categories they never bought before at those stations. And they really had to stock up, and the revenues were up like 200, 300% or something like that. They used that time to think about the future. If there is something like an all-electric future, let's just assume for a moment there would be.
Mhm.
All-electric future might mean no one comes fueling. So that actually means you, during a lockdown, you have exactly that situation. Because those sites that were suddenly losing money for them, those were pure petrol and diesel sites. And those that were making money were suddenly the grocery store sites. So they shifted their entire store strategy into two buckets and said, well, we have fuel sites and we will continue to have them as long as we sell fuel, but we will make sure that we will not invest in food service that much, right? They will never become a grocery store. They are fuel sites. We will be flexible in that and prepare them for a fuel with something future until we sell them. And the residential sites, we will actually build a completely different model into those stores, because even if we won't have the fuel anymore, we will keep the store and do something very different in the future. So yes, there might be some inflexibility based on location, but I think our industry is highly flexible, has always been highly flexible in our minds, which is why we came out of the crisis. Remember the financial crisis? Everyone was suffering, and convenience retail actually was doing rather well. And that is because we could stay flexible, and I'm pretty sure we will do the same again. The trend, by the way, sorry, long answer. The trend, by the way, before the pandemic was towards smaller shops anyway, away from the hypermarket, more to the neighborhood store, at least in developed countries. And I'm pretty sure we will see this continuing.
Okay, that was a long answer, but very interesting and
That
very
was a serious
valuable.
question, so I had to give a serious answer.
It said serious question. Right, now the next question is from Ian Brown. So you're getting the A team here in terms of the questions. I'd be scared, and I haven't read this through, so bear with me. Mark, all the innovative ideas you have shown look like they would work anywhere. So looks like globalization continues, or do you see any evidence that the situation is allowing some good regional or cultural differences to thrive?
Always, always, and it is even more important to look at regional and local cultures, behaviors, habits than it is to look for global trends. You need both actually in the end. And if you find a trend, well, if you find a good idea somewhere, it is good to look for innovation. It is good to look for big ideas. But just a very simple example, putting QR codes on elevator doors. Yes, that works if you have high rises, right?
Mhm.
If you have a country where you don't have big cities, where you don't have high rises, where you don't have that um, agglomeration of people, it won't work. So no matter how good that idea is. So you always have to make sure that you adapt whatever idea there is to your local needs. And that means the culture of your country. It means the culture of your region. Bavaria might be different than Lower Saxony. Scotland might be different than the southeast of England. You need to adapt it for culture, and of course, you need to adapt it for the location. That's always key.
Okay. And then I have a question. So you talked about flexibility here, and quite a lot of it was focusing on actually at the stores and what people are doing. But how does that then feed through to our audience, which is technology suppliers and technology providers generally? What should we be doing to make sure we're as flexible as possible? Not just the cables, but what do you think the next big thing is, and where do we need to be looking?
Well, I don't just say it because I'm here with the IFSF, but I think standards really is on top of the list, because if you want to stay flexible, if you want to be able to switch things from one to another, no matter if that is from one provider to another, from one hardware to another, or be it from today's technology to tomorrow's technology. If there are no standards, you will have a tough time. This is what we have right now, right? But if there are standards, it will make flexibility so much easier. So I would say standards is definitely number one. Number two is thinking, how can I phrase that? Thinking more about software than hardware. So software is easier to replace than hardware, right? Looking at our stores, looking at our infrastructure. So try to be as open, as wide, as flexible with your let's say as generic with what you have to screw in versus what you can change easily, where you can experiment more and where you can actually react much faster, which also means try to stay as flexible and as open with your hardware, and maybe don't go for a niche product, even if that might seem the best solution for now, it might not be the best solution for the future.
Okay, now Francois wrote a question while you were talking, and I think he thinks you've already answered it. So let me just read it to you, because it's difficult for me to listen to you and read at the same time. He says, how do you combine local flexibility and global standards? In other words, how can you control your expenses being flexible? So I think, yes.
Yeah, it is part of what I said, and it is it's always the difficulty between global and local, right? You have to find common ground, and I mean that is what you guys are doing, right? You try to find common ground on setting a standard, on setting basically inflexibility, right? You put something in that is for everyone to use, and then you have to put some flexibility on top to adapt locally. So I think the key thing here is to bear that in mind. And I don't know if we have time, but I could refer to a different industry here, where I worked in the past. Very briefly, some of you know I worked with Nielsen, so that's the market research industry, and they were facing the same issues, global versus local. There are some people like Coca-Cola who want to read a market share globally across 110 countries on the same basis. And there are some companies locally, like United Biscuits in the UK, they want to read their market share on their definition locally, only for the UK. And that's a tough thing to do, to create local adaptations of a global standard if you work in 110 countries. And same situation here. It is difficult, but technology will probably help us in the future to be more flexible.